Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Paul Jay in New York City. In the Middle East, the rebellion that perhaps gets the least attention is in Bahrain. At any rate, the struggle and conflict in Bahrain does continue, and now joining us to talk more about it is Hamid Dabashi. Hamid is a professor at Columbia University in Iranian Studies and Comparative Literature, and he's also the author of the book Brown Skin, White Mask. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, anytime.
So, what's your take now on Bahrain?
Bahrain, Paul, as you recall, began as the rest of the Arab region in the aftermath of Tunisia and Egypt, in solidarity with them and for their own reasons. It happens that inside Bahrain, you have a majority Shi'i population ruled by a minority Sunni caliphate, a caliph, ruler, king, monarch situation. So they immediately turned it into, oh, this is a Shi'i-Sunni conflict, and because Iran is Shi'i, so Iranians are helping it. This has nothing to do with the Arab Spring, and so forth. The demonstrations, one after another, in Manama, in the Pearl Square that are happening, Sunnis were there, Shi'is were there, activists, scholars, university professors, poets, journalists, they were telling the world repeatedly, this has to do with their civil liberties, this has to do with their dignity, has nothing to do with Sunni Shi'i. But the dominant press, the dominant narrative of the ruling regime, in collaboration with Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is petrified not only by its own Shi'i minority, but by rivalry with the Islamic Republic, they succeeded in narratively turning it into a Sunni Shi'i conflict. And soon, in collaboration with the Gulf Cooperation Council, the Saudi went and sent an occupying army to quell it, to stop it. Hundreds of activists were arrested, including physicians, for example, that in the hospital were treating the activists.
That's a very important point. A lot of the protesters, when they get injured, they will no longer go to the hospitals because the army and police are showing up at the hospitals, arresting protesters right out of their beds. Doctors, as you said.
Was absolutely. Patrick Coburn wrote a fantastic piece a couple of months ago in The Independent about the repression of the Shi'is. They are targeting the Shi'is. But they have temporarily succeeded in collaboration with the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Saudi occupying force. And they have given anywhere between 2 to life sentence to these activists. And the great United States, because of the Fifth Fleet, has been watching this to happen.
Now, just in case you haven't followed the story, the Fifth Fleet is based in Bahrain, or has a big base in Bahrain.
Exactly. I mean, the fantastic thing, Paul, about all of these uprisings, it exposes everybody's hypocrisy. Okay? U.S. and its Arab allies, so-called Arab allies, they mobilize for human rights and the civilian rights and protection of the civilians in Libya. And there is a massacre of civilians in Bahrain, and nobody talks about that because that's not politically beneficial. The same is about the rest of the region. The exposure of Hassan Nasrallah, for example, Hezbollah, who is very gung-ho when something like this happens in Tunisia or in Egypt, but his mom is the word when it happens in Iran or Syria, his own benefactors. The same is with Bahrain. Bahrain is a tiny country, but strategically is very important. And also because as a catalyst, it exposes the hypocrisy of the status quo. What is emerging is the fact that the geopolitics of the region has a catalytic effect. The uprising has not died away. A young woman who had just gone from Europe and married and lived in Bahrain just wrote a fantastic article published in Al Jazeera recently, simply saying the ideals and aspirations of Bahrainis, what is it that they want for their country, has nothing to do with Sunni Shi'i, is a young and progressive and ready population for democracy, for rule of law, for civil liberties, and for decency. It is integral to the rest of the region, but both the United States and Saudi Arabia and Islamic Republic, it's a joke to say that the Islamic Republic is on the side of this democratic uprising. The only thing that Islamic Republic provides for Bahrain is actually a model of repression to the ruling regime, has nothing to do with the democratic aspirations. There are two things. In the short run, from Libya to Syria to Bahrain, they managed to contain it. But the fact is that these ruling regimes, they are like a person who has cancer, but they're in denial. They take aspirin for it. Well, you take aspirin, you may control it. But the underlying force, the subterranean forces that have caused these revolutionary uprisings, they have been in the making, Paul. I've been telling you since day one, for 200 years. This was supposed to happen in the aftermath of European colonialism. So they are deep-rooted, they are demographic factors. This young, progressive generation will not stand for these corrupt medieval potentates.
This is a very interesting point, because partly what you're saying then, the Cold War stopped this process.
Exactly.
And now they're kind of going back,
they're
undoing the work of the Cold War.
I call it delayed defiance. It is delayed, but they're picking it up. It is massively based. It is predicated not only on economic factor, but also look at on the question of integrity, dignity. The slogan in Egypt was حرية, freedom, العدالة الاجتماعية, social justice, كرامة, dignity. I mean, it is indecent for these potentate octogenarians to rule for 30, 40, 50 years, rule over this young, progressive, fantastic, liberated generation that in their mind and soul they're free. And they can't stand these guys.
And the U.S. policy, especially in Egypt, because they're certainly not doing this in Bahrain, of trying to look on the side of the democratic movement, doesn't actually seem to be working all that well. Recent polls of Egyptian public opinion still say the U.S. policy is the bigger problem.
Of course it is. But the thing is that fortunately, as you see in the demonstrations, they are not having this knee-jerk reaction, U.S. imperialism, Zionism, etc. They realize that in order, for example, any point of commitment to the Palestinian cause will have to begin with the democratic uprisings at home. If you have these democratic institutions, then the expression of that democratic aspiration is no longer with wars and attacks and invasions and suicidal violence and so forth. This is why Israel is not ready for these democratic uprisings. Israel has wedded itself to all of these dictatorial potentates. They are petrified out of their wits. They are now rooting. Ted Koppel wrote a piece for for Wall Street Journal, asking U.S. to go and save Saudi Arabia. I mean, the liberals are outed now that they are also for Saudi Arabia, in order to assure Israel that all is hunky-dory. All is not hunky-dory. We have a democratic uprising, and Israelis need to rethink their future in democratic terms with what is happening, and not in terms of these potentates that are that have been ruling.
That will be the day.
It will come.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.